So I know that I said I would be gone for a while because I am moving, but if you guys couldn't tell already, I am hopelessly addicted to making videos, and after seeing the season 4 finale of Rick and Morty, I knew I had to get back to YouTube. So, Starmort Rick Turn of the Jerry is a fantastic episode, maybe one of the best of the series, and I know a lot of other people feel the same way. But why was it so good? Well, that's what this video is about. Because you can never have too many series, this video will start the How They Did It series, where I look at a single episode of television and break down all the narrative pieces that went into making it so good. And I'm not just talking about an analysis here, I'm talking about giving objective labels to the narrative elements that contribute towards the climax and the resolution. Think of a dialogue dive, but for a whole episode, and not just for dialogue. Okay, that might have been a crappy analogy, but I think you guys get the point. Anyway, this video is going to be long enough as it is, so let's get right into how they did it. Like any good story, this episode starts off with a hook, something to immediately catch the audience's attention and draw them in. In this case, the hook is conflict, which is almost always a guaranteed way to get people's mouths watering. Here, this narrative's first major character is introduced, Beth. This acts like a mini hook in and of itself, because the audience's expectation is for Beth to be a simple suburban housewife, not a space mercenary. This simple incongruence causes wonder in the audience. Why and what is happening? This then breeds further interest, which then means Dan Harmon already has us eating out of the palm of his hands. The next level of the hook is the revelation that the housewife Beth that we know is a clone.
Don't you ever miss Earth?
I don't have to miss it. I'm technically still there. My dad made a perfect clone of me to take my place.
And that has huge implications for the audience's interaction with the rest of the episode. Rick and Morty has elements of both episodic and serialized narratives. Some episodes of the show are episodic in that they are self-contained. None of the events of that episode have any bearing on any other episode. In contrast, the serialized episodes have pieces that connect and build off one another. This is important because where standalone episodic entries have to do all the heavy lifting of constructing a narrative from the ground up, serialized episodes can bring in the weight and power of previously established narrative elements. In simple terms, a serialized episode can spend less time constructing a story and more time telling a story. This all relates to Space Beth in two ways. First of all, her dialogue provides an answer to a question that was set up all the way back in Season 3, Episode 9.
I can make a clone of you. A perfect instance of you with all your memories, an exact copy in every way.
Okay. I know what I want to do.
Now, the audience is given a course of direction on Beth's decision in that moment, in a super quick, efficient manner.
I don't have to miss it. I'm technically still there.
Secondly, in a more meta-narrative sense, this revelation establishes that the show is still willing to continue with its connected, serialized plot lines, which came into question earlier in Season 4.
Yeah, you're right, Morty. We got all that meta-canon shit out of the way, and now we can just be ourselves.
Next comes the establishment of the inciting incident. This is the event or moment that spurs the characters into action.
So if you do go back, what happens to the clone? Does it have like a proximity-triggered device in its neck?
Who cares? Are we done?
Sure, unless you want me to remove the proximity-triggered device from your neck.
This again puts a question into the audience's head. Why? Why is there a bomb? Why would Rick do this? The yearning for an answer to this question maintains the audience's interest. Keep in mind too, this all happens in about 100 seconds, all before the title sequence. The last thing that I want to mention is a small bit of foreshadowing that occurs.
The NX-5's industry-leading tachyon beams eliminate planets twice as fast as the NX-4S with half the battery and zero built-in fatal design flaws. That's right, no more secret hole that blows the whole thing up when you shoot it. Your enemies will say it's unfair, we say it's about time.
While minor, it comes into more of an effect during the climax. Now, after the title sequence, we get to the second part of the intro, where the rest of the core characters are introduced. This is where dialogue is given and actions take place that will dictate the path of the characters for the rest of the episode. Jerry's desire for helpful puppeteering is introduced.
Not sure my therapy puppet will be done in time.
Great, because she specifically asked you to stop bringing puppets.
And Morty and Summer's lack of cooperativeness is introduced. This information is laid out in the intro because it sets the groundwork for the character arcs and the narrative that adheres to them. Notice how in part 1 of the intro, all of this groundwork information went unestablished. This is because it was understood due to the connected serialized nature of the plot. Since part 2 of the intro brings in completely new narrative elements, they must be established for the audience to understand. Now, since we talked about Jerry, Morty, and Summer's path in the narrative, let's move to Rick. Unlike the other family members, Rick does not deliver dialogue or perform actions that creates an easily distinguished arc. However, he does give dialogue that provides foreshadowing for his personal struggle that then becomes the core of the episode.
Oof, looks like you two have to fight about why you can't control your kids. Good thing Dr. Wong's got an opening. Bye!
This is subtle narrative building that can really only be appreciated by an audience on a second viewing. Still, it stands as a way to subliminally condition the audience on what to expect. The last character is Beth, and she receives no outright direction from the intro. While that might seem strange at first, my best assessment is because her character journey is congruent with Space Beth. There is no need to establish groundwork for a separate arc for Beth, because one has already been established for her in part 1 of the intro. So, with our characters introduced, the inciting incident established, and the journey set up, the introduction comes to a close, and the midsection with rising action can begin, and the action rises almost immediately.
Engineer, Princess, I'm sure every caveman that sees a microwave calls it a rock cabinet.
Here we are shown the first true conflict of the narrative. In simplest terms, conflict in a narrative can be understood as one character standing in the way of another character trying to achieve their goal. Since Space Beth wants to kill Rick, and Rick, wants to keep that from happening, there is an established conflict. It is important to note that narratives must have some type of conflict in order to progress. Without a conflict, characters have nothing to overcome and no progress can be made. Getting back a little wider in scope, the midsection is also the traditional spot in the narrative where the information previously established in the intro evolves, shifts, and becomes expanded upon. And here is no different. Within, dialogue is given that alters both Space Beth's and the audience's perception of Rick's motivations.
The device in her neck would have transferred a database of her memories to your device before vaporizing her. So much for that plan.
Now the audience has the answer to the previously open question of why there was a device in Space Beth's neck. Of course, this revelation is only a tool to manipulate the audience's understanding of the situation for the rest of the episode. But for now, we understand Space Beth as the real Beth, congruent with our understanding in the intro. This scene in the midsection also introduces the nuanced underlying traits and themes of Space Beth as a character. An immediate parallel is created between her and Rick, and impressively, this is not done through a blatant explanation to the audience, it is accomplished organically in the scene through action and dialogue. Anything Rick does, Space Beth also does. This is showing versus telling.
Wanna grab a drink?
All the time.
Good girl.
Another key aspect of Space Beth is her hatred of Rick, and this was a concerted effort by the creators.
I wanted a version of Beth that was more like Rick and therefore ironically hated Rick.
Rick hates himself, so anyone like Rick would also hate Rick. But Space Beth serves another purpose too. She is the physical embodiment of one side of the duality that previously existed in Beth. One part of Beth wanted to be the typical loving mother/wife, while another part of her reveled in being like Rick.
Oh my God, I'm my father!
These two sides of Beth now exist as mutually exclusive entities. One is always a loving wife with the family, and one is always the galactic warrior. Space Beth's expressed character trait sets up the impactful character arc-defining moments that come in the climax, but we will get to that later. The main narrative aspect to take away from this scene in the garage is that Space Beth is the real Beth. Of course, this has the secondary effect of nullifying Space Beth's motivation to kill Rick, which means the only source of conflict in the episode is also nullified. And as I said before, narratives need conflict to progress. This is why in the diner scene, two sources of conflict are introduced, one after the other. The first is the Galactic Federation's arrival to Earth.
The new Galactic Federation.
Immediately after that, doubt is reinserted into the narrative as to which Beth is the real Beth.
Oh, they're gonna track down Beth.
You mean Beth's clone?
Right, Beth's clone. What did I say?
Bringing back the original conflict of the episode. So, the next parts of the episode have a ton of different necessary narrative pieces within, but they come so quickly that they might be hard to initially appreciate. Let's focus on how the established character arcs set up in the intro are progressed in the midsection. Morty and Summer are shown to be at complete odds with one another over the invisibility belt. Their combined arc in the story is based in going from discordance to cooperation. In simple terms, trait A is becoming trait C. Now, you will notice that I skipped over B. This is because anytime a narrative is based around transformation, there needs to be a point in the narrative where the characters undergo a transition. Some event, either internal or external, must cause the characters to consider adopting trait C instead of trait A. We can call this transformative part of the formula B. So, the episode has already established Morty and Summer's trait A through action and dialogue. The event that fosters the transition, or B, is the arrival of the aliens. While Summer is invisible, she picks up the fire extinguisher and assists Morty in overcoming the invaders. This acts as the transition. The next scene switches over to the therapy session, and it also progresses a character arc. This time, Jerry. However, his progression is markedly different from Morty and Summer's. Where the two siblings' arc revolved around changing trait A to trait C, Jerry's arc revolves around maintaining trait A through adversity. Jerry's entire arc through the episode is proving that puppeteering is helpful and useful. To do that, the conflict he must face is others trying to stop his puppeteering. This was established in the intro.
Not sure my therapy puppet will be done in time.
Great, because she specifically asked you to stop bringing puppets.
And furthered in the midsection.
Jerry, leave the puppet.
It's a one-way ticket to a breakthrough, Beth.
Jerry, do you agree that the use of puppets makes you seem dumb and crazy?
Now, a more important part of this scene is the introduction of the episode's central antagonist. While the Galactic Federation stands as the large force that presents a threat to our characters, Tammy exists as the singular embodiment of that opposition. Think of Loki for the Chitauri, Palpatine for the Empire, and Ozai for the Fire Nation. On a more nuanced level, the serialized nature of this episode allowed the usual character building of the antagonist to be skipped, because Tammy is already a character that the audience would know as a threat and dislike. Again, this leaves more time for telling the story instead of setting it up. The next scene reaffirms both the audience's and the character's ambiguity about which Beth is the clone.
And who is that?
A clone?
It also introduces possible motivations for Rick's actions.
You know what would be even cooler? Is a space daughter? So I made one, and I put a bomb in her neck in case she ever came back.
Further into the episode, once both Beths have been beamed up to the ship, Rick confronts Tammy, where more subtle dialogue is given to foreshadow the end of the episode.
They know if you're left alone, you're a non-threat.
Shortly after, Summer and Morty save Rick and Jerry, going on to deliver one of my favorite fourth wall breaking lines of all time.
Holy Morty!
And Summer, we work together. That's our arc.
We went from siblings to invisible to working together.
It's not Citizen Kane, but why compete with whatever's going on here, you know?
The reason why Morty says this is because usually more time is dedicated to establishing trait A, having a transitionary B period, and then making a full transformation to trait C. In this episode, the whole arc happened incredibly quickly. But hey, there's a whole bunch more important stuff going on, so that really didn't take priority. All that matters is that Morty and Summer are fully cooperative, meaning they have succeeded in their transformative character arc. Next, Summer saves Rick from being axe-kicked by Tammy, then Rick eliminates the central antagonist. When he does so, he gives dialogue referencing Bird Person, foreshadowing his eventual appearance later on.
You made me go to a wedding. And you killed my best friend. I should have said that one first.
That actually brings us to the climax, where the conflict comes to a head and the characters face their greatest challenges. When all the characters are on the alien ship, the audience is shown both Beths not getting along at all.
You fetch your shitty father's lemonade. You cosplay as your shitty father in his 30s.
Beth is literally seeing both sides of herself at the same time, making the allegory about self-loathing very literal. This really kicks off Beth's character arc, self-acceptance. So, if her currently expressed A trait is self-hatred, and her prospective C trait is self-acceptance, there needs to be a B event that causes a transition between the two. Conveniently enough, that comes rather quickly.
Beth, if one of you is still alive, you're my real daughter. If you're both alive, don't hurt the other one. She's just a clone. She's not worth it. I'm coming, baby.
That piece of shit.
Both Beths use their animosity towards Rick, fueled by the ambiguity of which one is a clone, to ally with each other, putting aside their differences for a common goal. Returning to Rick, the scene introduces a new central antagonist to fill the void that Tammy left. This time, it is Bird Person. Once again, a serialized character that already has narrative weight with the audience. This allows the characters to go right into open conflict without any setup because the parameters have been preset. During the fight, Phoenix Person, gives dialogue that foreshadows yet another piece of the ending.
I always wondered who would win if we ever fought.
Then you were always a bad friend.
Moving back to Summer and Morty, since their character arc was completed so early, their new conflict becomes the maintenance of their new trait. The narrative puts them in a position where their newly established cooperation is challenged.
Working together is our belt.
You gave it away!
You said we didn't need it. I wish you were never born.
You were an accident!
The tension becomes whether this new trait will be maintained or if the characters will abandon it. If this seems familiar, it's very similar to Jerry's arc of maintaining his outlook on puppeteering through adversity. In this scene, we also see the payoff of foreshadowing set up in the intro.
The NX-5's industry-leading tachyon beams eliminate planets twice as fast as the NX-4S with half the battery and zero built-in fatal design flaws. That's right, no more secret hold that blows the whole thing up when you shoot it. Your enemies will say it's unfair, we say it's about time.
NX-5 corporate sponsor detected. Cannot penetrate Wranglers. Built too tough. Built too...
Instead of having to systematically destroy the entire opposing army, Morty and Summer cooperate, maintaining Trait C and instantly stopping the spaceship because of its fatal design flaw. Returning to Rick, he is saved from certain death against Pee-Pee by both Beths, who are then put into mortal danger themselves. At this point, there are no immediate characters left to oppose the antagonist, and that leads into the perfect moment for Jerry to appear.
Bird Person, stop! It's me, that Tammy girl!
This distraction then allows Beth to deactivate Pee-Pee with a conveniently placed off switch, which on a comedic level is pretty hilarious because it completely undermines all the difficulty that Rick went through fighting Pee-Pee. Of course, this entire sequence is the completion of Jerry's arc.
Saved the day with puppeting. Only one with a decent arc.
Through the highest level of adversity that the Climax could bring, Jerry maintained his belief in puppeteering, improved its usefulness by assisting in overcoming the antagonist. This scene also signals the end of the Climax and the start of the resolution, where the conflict has been overcome and the characters come to terms with what their narrative journeys have meant for them. Beth, in particular, has one of the more powerful showings in the resolution. She completes her journey of self-acceptance and extricates herself from being dependent on Rick.
I'm sure you'd love for us to need that from you, but I don't care what's in that vial. Yeah, me neither.
Because of how secure she has become with her own existence, she no longer needs to be tied to Rick for validation or answers. Likewise, Summer and Morty continue to show their newly developed cooperation. But it is Summer who delivers the most poignant dialogue.
Don't drag us into your bullshit just because you're losing control.
This dialogue, coupled with the actions of the characters, bring to the surface the theme of Rick's journey across the narrative of the episode. The entire episode has been a long sequence of setting up Rick's isolation and lack of power. Rick fails to control the Beths no matter what he tried.
Oof, looks like you two have to fight about why you can't control your kids.
Due to Rick's actions across the episode, he is divided from the family.
You're a bad father.
Don't let him divide us!
This division comes from the family becoming ever increasingly independent from Rick. At points prior to this episode, Rick stood as the undeniable despot of the family and took pride in it.
I've replaced them both as the de facto patriarch of your family and your universe. I just took over the family, Morty.
But across the season 4 finale, the family accomplished their goals independent of Rick, and in multiple cases saved Rick after he failed to overcome his own obstacles. This all contributes to the buildup of Rick being left alone and feeling powerless, unable to even discover the answer to a problem he created. Again, this leads back to previously stated dialogue.
They know if you're left alone, you're a non-threat.
Across the episode, the question of which Beth is the real Beth is dangled in front of the audience's face. But that is really only a vehicle to the true question of which choice did Rick make. Ultimately, the answer is left ambiguous, proving just how much of a coward Rick really is.
And then he can't bear to even know which one is which.
Big money, big money.
Which is, I think, the most cowardly part of it all.
Still, Rick is revealed to have one last bastion of connectivity though, Bird Person. However, even that is taken away, and in the moment, he is left in literal isolation, both physically and emotionally.
At least I'm a pretty good friend.
Then you were always a bad friend.
This whole sequence is highly similar to other moments in the show where Rick is left alone and saddened because of actions that he took. Although not strictly serialized, this seems to be a prevailing theme of Rick's character, and one that truly hits home in the season 4 finale. And that's how they did it. If you like what you heard and want to support the channel, like, comment, and subscribe, or join the Patreon to get access to some pretty awesome perks. And don't worry guys, the second channel is definitely still coming, I'm just waiting on a whole bunch of equipment to make it happen. Anyway, this was a blast to do. If you want me to do more how they did it, leave suggestions in the comments. As always, it was a pleasure, and I will talk to you all again soon.